Welcome. Today we're going to talk about quadratic characteristics, or a few bit more. Our objective is to find zeros, the axis of symmetry, and the vertex of a parabola. My big question for you today is, can you describe these characteristics in your own words, or can you describe how you're going to find them? My big plan for this is I do want to show you this with the calculator, so you're going to have to remind me that we're going to do a lot of this through the calculator. So let's look at the first problem. Alright, since I'm going to show you a lot of this through the calculator, kind of follow along. I'm not going to give you the definition, so you might want to write these on or add these on as your own. Okay, in any quadratic function, we're looking for the vertex and the zeros. Later on, we're going to discover the zeros are actually solutions to quadratic equations, so that's why they're very important. And if you can graph and you know how to do this on the calculator, everything else I can show you, is going to be necessary for me, but this will be your easiest bet. Alright, so what are the zeros? The zeros are your x-intercepts, where they cross the x-axis. You either have 2 zeros, 1 zero, or no zeros. That's it. That's all you can get for a quadratic equation, so keep that in mind. You either have 2, 1, or none. In this case, you can see we have 2 zeros. Those are where they cross the x-axis. And we have our one vertex. There's the vertex right there in the middle. Again, that's our middle point. So let's go back with what we did last time, what you did in the last set of notes, where we looked at this and said, okay, is this graph facing upward or downward? And it is facing upward. Oh, but let me go ahead and give you the zeros. Now, I'm going to give these to you as points, but reality is you don't want those points. You want just where they're at -1 and at 3. That's it. Or I should say that and 3, so you see that as an and, not 1, 3. So -1 and 3. That's where they cross the x-axis. Those are your zeros. Your vertex is at 1, -4. So again, we're saying this faces upward. Whoops. Skipped a little bit too much here. Let's try that again. It's facing upward. It's got a minimum value at, again, -4. Remember, the minimum value is the y of the vertex. And then there is an axis of symmetry. Okay, the axis of symmetry is always the x value of the vertex. So in this case, it's x equals 1. That is the line that will divide the quadratic into 2 equal halves. So kind of keep that in mind. Again, you have that it's upward, has a minimum value of -4, because the vertex is at 1, -4, axis of symmetry at x equals 1, and it has 2 zeros, one at -1 and another one at 3. Okay, so let's look at another example. And notice that I did this through a graph, so most of these will be through graphs. So even if I give you an equation, you could actually graph it and go from there. Okay, so here's another example. Y equals x squared minus 6x plus 9. So if you were to graph this, you would end up with a graph that would look something like this. Let's see here. Let's do that. There we go. Now, as we can see, this graph again faces upward. It has a vertex at 3, 0. It has a minimum value of 0. The axis of symmetry is at x equals 3. So let's focus on that again. Again, the vertex, when you get the vertex, it'll give you your min or max value, which is always the y coordinate of your vertex. The axis of symmetry is the line that can divide the quadratic into 2 equal halves, and that's always the x value of your vertex. So keep that in mind. Okay, and then there is only 1 zero here because it's only touching it in one spot, and that 0 is at 3. Okay, and notice for zeros we just put that number of where they're crossing here on the x-axis. Alright, final example, because really this is something that's kind of short and doesn't need that much. -2x squared minus 2. Here's the graph. It's facing downward. That means it has a max value. That vertex, which is 0, -2, that means it has a max value, and the max value here is -2. The axis of symmetry is x equals 0. Okay, so again, the y becomes the max value, the x is the axis of symmetry. And then your 0 doesn't cross the x-axis at all. So there are no zeros. So the zeros are none. And like I said, from a graph, it should be pretty easy. So if I give you a graph, you can find all this information. If I give you an equation, you could graph it on the calculator and come up with all this information. If there are any questions about this, make sure to write it down and let me know. But that is it for now. See y'all later.